Hello, everybody. Welcome to ZapChat with Ovis. I am one of the co-founders of Ovis and one of the co-hosts. My name is Elsa Ramon.
And I'm Tracy Grant. Wonderful to be here tonight. What we want to talk to you about tonight is really important subject matter. And unfortunately, my computer has frozen. So, Elsa, could you
Oh
take over
no, you
for
know what?
just a
That's
second?
okay. No worries.
Hmm.
That's why we're a team because if something
Yes.
happens, we can always cover each other. I,
Thank
I
you.
I'll tell everybody that we are journalists. You and I combined with more than 40 years of experience between us, and we have had plenty of experience with the corporate media, and we were both very fed up in the direction the corporate media was taking journalism, at least to the public. So we started Ovis to take back the truth, essentially. And if you don't know about Ovis and you're joining our Zap Chat for the very first time, we are a fast growing movement and we're dedicated to ending fake news by ensuring that reporters and their stories on our platform are trusted, verifiable, and accountable to we the people, and the fact checkers are held accountable as well in our community.
Hmm.
So, with that, we wanted to bring to your attention that January is Human Trafficking Awareness Month. And this is really important to us for several reasons. We made it our topic tonight, and we brought it up because the corporate news media, when you do hear about it in corporate news, it focuses primarily on the sensationalist parts of the stories, like the kidnapping and the violence, which, yes, people do need to understand that's part of it, or they just focus on the women and the girls who are sex trafficked, something that might be click worthy. And it's
Hmm.
so much more of a problem than that. And it's a
Absolutely.
continuous problem. And it's not something that really is given any attention to, barely at all, in the corporate media.
It's true. You're right, Elsa. There's so much the corporate media doesn't talk about, and that's why we started Ovis. And we're dedicated to revealing the truth on subjects that the corporate media can't or won't talk about. And that's what we're doing tonight.
And that's why we are talking about this tonight because, I don't know that people really see what a real problem this is throughout our country. So, our guest tonight is someone who is extremely knowledgeable about this. She is a National Child Protection Task Force member. She's with the Homeland Security and does investigations with Homeland Security. She is a professor, very well versed, and has really dedicated much of her studies in life to ending human trafficking, slavery, sex trafficking, and ending this horrible problem, not just within our country in the United States, but all over the world. It is a global problem. So I'd like to welcome Professor Amy Storer, who's joining us tonight on Zap Chat. Hi, Amy. Sorry.
Thank you. Thank you so much,
Hello.
Elsa and Tracy. First of all, I think it's so empowering and incredible what you ladies are doing and leading this effort to really bring forth the real facts and to get people talking about subjects that are being swept under the rug. I share your frustrations with the situation, and for me, I like to. I'm a straight shooter. I tell it like it is. I think there's a lot of things in the media that people aren't aware of when it comes to human slavery in this country. One of the items that I would like to highlight tonight is labor trafficking and the connection with immigration, with illegal immigration. That is often a subject that politicians do not want to touch with a 10-foot pole because it's obviously a very polarizing topic. The fact is, we have 77% of all agriculture, farm, human slaves in this country are illegal immigrants. I live in Miami, Florida, working on the Homeland Security here, and I do outreach and I try to talk to people when I go out and go places. I try to talk to illegal immigrants. I want to make sure that they are being treated fairly, that they are receiving fair wages. Um, pretty much every single conversation, very tragically, I am finding out that they are not being paid. They're getting paid maybe $5 an hour. They're maybe getting paid, $2 an hour in some cases. And, really, really sadly that these people, a lot of them are happy to make more than $1 a day that they've been dealing with in their poverty of Mexico. So really disgustingly, these corporations are really driving illegal immigration because they want that cheap labor. Pretty soon, cheap labor becomes free labor. They want more and more, and greed builds and builds. And these businesses, um, for me, I almost believe that the reason this problem has not been put to rest is because of lobbyists and people that are in high positions that want to get that cheap labor, and they want to just keep these people shuffled in here. One man I spoke to, I was very upset after the things he was telling me. He told me he worked for at least 5 different companies in Miami, Florida, and was paid at most maybe $5 an hour, working 12 hours a day, never got a break. I told him, would you be willing to testify? I want to get cases and prosecutions on these people. We will grant you a URT visa. That's one thing that we do with Homeland Security. We protect victims, and we will give you that citizenship and that ability to stay here. We will protect you if you feel empowered to come forward. And he told me, Amy, you'd have to arrest the whole city. He said,
Amy,
everybody.
I've got to ask you. I'm sorry to interrupt, but I've got to ask you. You really highlighted two problems, but one that leads into the other, and but they're both very important. The problem with immigration and the immigration laws, especially here in the United States, and how that may lead to some of the people being taken advantage of and trafficked, and what leads to other parts of trafficking, whether it's human slavery or sex trafficking. So these are two very big problems that kind of cross paths, unfortunately. But why do you talk about this, even though this is here in the United States?
I'm sorry, Elsa, your question was, this is not just in the United States. Is that what your question was?
Yeah, why do you think the media doesn't want to talk about
yeah.
this issue, and even though it is a growing problem and a consistent problem, not just in the United States, but globally.
Yeah.
And has been around for a really long time.
Well, I think that is such a relevant question, and I hate to say it, but I truly believe that it is lobbyists. I truly believe that essentially, so agriculture, IT, we like cheap labor. We're used to having cheap products, right? So right now in the Supreme Court, there's a case, and I hope to God that justice will prevail. But the case is basically about Nestle, the cocoa farms overseas, and these very brave victims came forward and sued under the very good legislation that enabled victims to sue private companies. That was a big change for our country, which is great. But these victims said, they want to sue, Nestle Corporation for labor trafficking them overseas. So this Supreme Court case will be very important because it will hold the United States companies accountable for their actions overseas, okay, for enslaving people overseas. So, but, to answer your question, I think Americans are addicted to cheap products as well. I think if this case wins, we will probably be paying, $100 for some tennis shoes. We will probably, because guess what? It's going to come down full circle. We're going to see, how all of these products and goods that we've been buying are actually supporting slave labor. So I think it's an economic, it's all comes down to greed. Everything with human slavery comes down to greed. I think one of the other reasons that this is not being spoken about as much, particularly the immigration side, is because politicians want the votes. It's not a sexy topic. Politicians don't want to alienate voters. The immigration question is tricky because of course, it's very polarizing, right? And so I think that politicians are afraid to really voice this problem. One of the other things that I think is not talked about in the media is really the unbelievable challenges that we have in law enforcement and the unbelievable bureaucracy and red tape that we have to deal with. I have to get a non-disclosure order signed from a judge on every single basic subpoena that I have for child exploitation, for any kind of Facebook. And these companies, I'll just blast them out right now. They're terrible. These companies do not care about helping us. Facebook's, Amazon, all of them, they take forever to get back to you. Cash App is really the worst. All of the, and I don't care. I love to blast them to the media. They're terrible. They don't answer our subpoenas on urgent child exploitation matters. They don't answer our subpoenas. They hold up the case, and we have no evidence then. And these children are out there getting brutally raped. I was up all night last night on this terrible case that this 14-year-old I identified in a sex ad, being trafficked around the country. And it's getting people to actually care and help us. Especially the sex websites. Don't even get me started. They do not give a damn. They just want to make a buck. Hotels are not that much better. I do have one good contact with Marriott. I will give them credit where credit is due. But again, I don't think people realize the amount of red tape. I mean, we don't have time for all this paperwork. We have to get moving on this, and it's really unbelievable. The human trafficking hotline, just to give your audience an idea of where this is heading, has risen at 259% of calls since the year 2008. That's how high human slavery has risen in this country. And you know what? All of these news stories that are like,
That's really
kumbaya,
scary, Amy.
yeah, it's horrifying. And guess
I'm
what's
sorry
gonna
to
happen?
interrupt, but
Yeah, yeah,
because
Is there a
there's
way
a
we
couple
could
of
break it
issues.
down? Exactly. If we could kind of break it down
yeah.
for people watching, there are different types of human trafficking, right? I mean,
Mm-hmm.
a lot of us, if you watch movies, you might think of the movie Taken or something.
Mm-hmm.
That's trafficking.
Mm-hmm.
But there's labor, there's all sorts of things.
Right.
Can we kind of go through it and just
Sure.
sort of explain the different
I would
types?
love to talk about, yeah, there are so many different types, and there are new types of trafficking that are coming out every time. So I deal with all different kind of cases. I have seen things that you wouldn't even believe in your wildest dreams. Slave auctions are happening. We fought a civil war in this country to end slavery. We have slave auctions going on in this country, selling human beings, selling babies, selling, and the media will say, obviously, um, most of the time the trafficker is somebody the victim knows.
In what way, though, Amy? I mean, it like what are
I'm sorry, you broke up there.
so we're breaking down the types of trafficking. We
Yes,
have
yes.
the human
Sex
trafficking, which
trafficking,
is,
yes.
if I
Mm-hmm.
understood correctly. Can you hear me okay now? Am I
Yes,
still breaking
yes.
up?
Yeah,
There are a couple of different
yeah.
adults, and then exploitation of children. There's also trafficking of people for work, to maybe
Yes.
indentured servants,
Yes.
slaves, right under our noses sometimes. So there
Right.
are different categories
Yes.
of trafficking. And I think a
Yes.
lot of people maybe focus
Sure.
on the sex trafficking because that's a lot of what gets
Yeah.
sensationalized in the media. But it all, unfortunately, is intertwined. And as we
Yeah.
talked about earlier, just a few minutes ago, it crosses paths with the tricky
Yeah.
immigration system and the immigration
Yeah.
problems
Right. Right.
that we have here in the United States,
Yes.
and opens up a lot of opportunities for traffickers to exploit
Yeah.
our broken.
Yeah.
We have the problem of our broken immigration system fueling that fire and contributing to that, intentional or not. But there's something else you said. You brought up a case about these employees who were brave enough to come forward and bring a lawsuit forward against their company. And are you saying, and you're saying a lot of times, I think if I heard you correctly, that companies and other industries want cheap labor, they need cheap
Oh yeah.
labor. People here consume in the United States, and it's nonstop. But at what point are you saying that some of these companies are, and industries are complicit to
Yes.
the trafficking
Yeah.
situation?
100%. 100%. They're absolutely facilitating. I would tell you that every single social media website is 100% facilitating. They are not. We have the automobile industry right in this country, so we started to have regulations for the automobile where you have to have safety protocols, right? You have to have environmental protocols. Okay, so the same laws should take place on the internet to protect children, to protect victims. Um, I have seen cases where it's a numbers game. The internet makes it so easy and accessible for traffickers to target victims, to target um, 60 to 80% of all child sex trafficking cases in this country, in one study that we found, were all foster children, children from the foster care. So, yes, it's disgusting. It's terrible. And you think your child is safe. These pimps, they can smell vulnerability and they will go after. And I have parents calling me up, and it breaks my heart. I have parents that have, and it's not just international, it is American born college students. So I have parents calling me up, and their daughter's over 18, so you can't even report her missing. She can do what she wants. She goes off to college, has a great relationship from a wealthy family, and just meets this guy with kind of a shady background, and is like never heard from again. She changes her phone number, everything. We all know what happened. She's been trafficked. I worked everything I could to try to get evidence for that, and I couldn't find it. And it happens every day. It's happening everywhere. And if you look at the statistics of 259% uptick since 2008 for the human trafficking, what's going to happen in 10 years if we don't, and that's the other thing the media is like celebrating, like, oh, that's great. We arrested 30 people. There's not enough prisons. Like if I was in charge right now, if I was President Biden, I would start building more prisons. We need more prisons. We need more prosecutors. We need, I'm sorry to tell you, but and that's the other problem is we don't have enough prosecutors, that they're so busy with so many cases we have. I have child exploitation cases that have a decent amount of evidence, but we have such a so many cases that we can't even begin to start, and it's just terrible. For me, I have seen cases where the farm trafficking on the farms is actually it's slaves being fed to other slaves. So the labor slaves are being fed with imported women from Mexico to sexually service the labor slaves. It is unbelievable. And there's other types of trafficking that I haven't even got to that are even more horrific, such as organ trafficking, which has really increased during COVID, especially for lungs and those type of organs, where there's a new trend with these children in China that are basically getting their eyeballs gouged out to sell the corneas to people in the United States, to donors, to kidneys, and these children. I want to charge them with murder is what they need to be charged with, because these children aren't going to live; they're going to die. And we have adoption trafficking as well. Actually, baby mills, where women from China are coming here, and they're actually, their bodies are being used as a vessel to pump out babies to unsuspecting parents who are trying to adopt a child. And little do they know that this is a human trafficking baby, that these women are just coming over here, and they're basically being enslaved in these homes to continually birth babies year after year. Yeah, it's unbelievable.
Well, I have to admit, I mean, and Elsa, I'm sure you would probably agree with me. Over the decades that I was a reporter, many times we would be told that a child is missing, or a teenager, and sometimes we were told, oh, well, that's not really a story. She probably ran off with her boyfriend. She
Right.
probably did, all sorts of reasons for why this person vanished.
Yep.
But as you're saying right now, it's not necessarily that at
Yeah.
all. I mean, there are a million different
Mhm.
ways of that
Yeah.
this person could have disappeared,
Right.
and most of them, seem really
Yeah.
nefarious.
Yeah, thank you for bringing that up, Tracy. And that's something that I've actually been very vociferous about on the National Child Protection Task Force. So really tragically, there was an operation in an Alabama office that they tried to find missing children. So if a missing child has a criminal record, we can get up on their phone and try to find where they are. And we ended up finding quite a few. And the very sad thing was their parents didn't even want them back. They didn't even care. So you see why they become victims, because they fall for this person that's giving them affection, and that's the only thing they know. But to your point, Tracy, um, runaways are, and at the National Child Protection Task Force, we do not distinguish between runaways and missing children. We treat them all the same, because runaways are the highest risk of all, because they don't even have anybody looking for them. If you think about that, they don't even have anybody that cares. At least a missing child has somebody that at least reported it. And so they're the most vulnerable. And really, when I think about human trafficking spreading the coronavirus, we had really a double of the human trafficking calls doubled during the coronavirus. We had 98% uptick in child sex solicitation online reports from the National Child of Missing and Exploited Children. We have these predators. They're loving COVID. They're just sitting at home. The kids aren't in school. They have all the time in the world to sit there online and target them. And they go after. I had a child sex trafficker where I literally looked at his friends list, and he had all underage females as his friend, and he had, and that's why we need anti-grooming legislation in this country, because there's nothing I can do. Like, he's clearly recruiting these girls, looking at his messages, but it's so hard. Unfortunately, the bar is so high for us to get these cases prosecuted, and it's like people think that we can just go and arrest somebody. They don't even know the hoops we have to go through. I think they think like, and for example, one of the things that is not being talked about in the media at all, and it just burns me up inside. So of course we had the terrible thing happen with the Capitol and the breach of, and those people of course all deserve to be arrested. But really interestingly, so we have this technology for facial recognition, and that particular resource was called Clearview, and I used it every single day. I have found so many victims that way. I was able to, and it's all open source, by the way. This is anything someone posts online. It's just an algorithm to match, right? You're not invading someone's privacy. I'm sorry, but you don't, if you post something publicly online, that's not private. Okay. So, and so anyway, the Congress was really against it and trying to ban it. And we had to shut down all of our accounts. I kid you not, I cried the day that my account got shut down because I couldn't find my victims anymore. It was horrible. So now all of a sudden the Capitol thing happens, and now they want
So,
all the law
Amy,
enforcement to use facial recognition.
Mhm.
Isn't that funny? Like, okay, so you didn't care when, it's funny when it affects you,
Amy,
because now that you know.
Mm-hmm. Go ahead, Elsa. Elsa.
Go ahead.
I wanted to ask Amy, there's so many cases. Can you hear me?
I'm
Yeah.
sorry.
Are we having connection
You're
issues?
glitching a little bit, but go ahead.
Go ahead.
Can you guys hear me okay?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yes.
There are a lot of examples you've given. Are these cases that have been investigated by Homeland Security?
Thank you for that question, Elsa. I can't go into too many specifics, obviously, but these are examples of real cases that we've dealt with. And unfortunately, we have, it's, you don't have to look hard to find human trafficking. I can turn on the internet right now and I can open 10 new cases right now, just looking on Facebook, just looking on, it's unbelievable. And if I was a parent, and I would tell any parent out there, don't let your child on social media read their text messages on their phone. It can happen to anyone. It's, it's 1 in 5 children now. In a recent MIT study, 1 in 5 children have received sexual grooming messages. 1 in 4 children of all human slavery victims, that's both sex and labor, are children. 1 out of 4 of these slaves are children in the world. It's terrible.
So is that why you're saying that right now during this COVID era, that this is at a high because there are so many kids who are not in school and they're online, and people are targeting them even more than usual?
I love that question, Tracy, and I have an even better response. That is part of the problem. The other hypothesis that I have is so 90% of child exploitation victims, or maybe it was 85% about their child exploitation in the home. Most of the time, that predator is somebody within the home. Unfortunately, most of the time, it's a parent. So now these children are suddenly locked up with their predator, and they don't have school. They don't have a teacher to, teachers give us a lot of tips, like they notice something's wrong. And so runaways have gone up tremendously. And it's been there's been many studies that show runaways are approached by a human trafficker within 48 hours. 60% of them reported that. And so the number one human trafficking victim has, most of them all have a child exploitation background, which makes sense because they run away and they run into the arms of these pimps that are pretending to give them affection, and they're pretending to give them love or give them a place to stay, and they're just there to use them as a commodity for their greed.
Wow. Well,
Yeah.
thank you so much, Amy Storer. This has actually been a really interesting discussion. I appreciate you taking the time to talk to us about this tonight.
Thank you.
Hopefully, we'll be able to bring more attention to this subject matter, and
Amy,
other
thank you.
media outlets will do the same. Thank you.
Thank
very
you,
much.
ladies, so much. You guys are doing really God's work. You guys are really doing the American dream by getting people information. And the last thing I'll say is, if you see something, say something. If something doesn't look right, especially for the audience out in California, it's the highest state for human trafficking. So call the Homeland Hotline. We've got great agents out there, and we will do whatever we can to help people get out of this terrible prison they're in.
Great. Well, thank you, and thank you for the good work that you're doing.
Thank you so much. I'm really honored to be on the show. Thank you so much.
Thanks,
Professor Storer. Thank you so much.
Now, Elsa, it's that time, I believe, when we join in with one of our favorite people, Karen Manal, our chief fact checker here at Ovis. Karen, is that you, my friend?
Yes, here. Can you hear me?
Yes, absolutely. Thanks for joining us tonight.
Yeah, good to be here.
Can you hear us?
Yes, I think there's a bit.
Oh, okay, great.
I might be having, can you guys hear me? Because I think I've had some audio issues, unfortunately, during Amy's interview. So I just want to make sure we're all okay before we go forward.
You sound great now. You do.
Good, okay. Perfect. Hi, Karen.
Now, Karen, I mean, this subject matter is, it's fascinating. I think it is. And it's something that obviously it is not limited here to the United States. This is something that, that happens in countries around the world. Tell us a little bit more about, I know your job is, that you are the person who is in charge here at Ovis of helping to get down to the nitty gritty, essentially. And that's basically, you are the backbone of what Ovis is all about. We are all about bringing people the facts of the story and not, the extra stuff that the media tries to sometimes pile on. And sometimes that stuff, when you read it in a newspaper or see it on television, is not necessarily objective. Here at Ovis, it is, because we are dealing with the facts. So this subject matter is interesting. Tell us a little bit. I mean, what have you been able to find out about trafficking?
Yeah, well, the numbers are really, it's scary, actually. About 25 million people globally are estimated to be victims of labor and sex trafficking, which is like a huge number. This might be an outdated number. I'm not sure what year this is from, but it's from the United Nations. So, this is a huge global issue that we're facing. And, in the US also, we have a lot of cases about this. And it's not only about sex, it's about forced labor on minors and on people who don't want to be working against their own will. And according to the trafficking hotline, they saw about a 3% increase in victims and survivors who contacted them from last year. from 2018, I believe this is a 2019 figure. So yeah, it's a huge issue that we should all be really talking about. We should all be talking about this with facts and with verified sources, and all the information out there hopefully should be verified information from verified sources. But yeah, it's a very big issue that needs to get more media coverage, and not only about um, those harsh incidents that everyone focuses on media, but it should be about every single issue, every single trafficking incident should be a newsworthy segment, a newsworthy story.
And you bring up a good point. I mean, this is something that should be covered on a regular basis. These are stories that fall into the background, right, Elsa? I mean, they just,
Well, it's a continuing story.
Yeah, there's something going on with your sound again. I'm sorry, but yes, absolutely. These stories, this happens. It happens all the time, and yet, if you were just watching the news and basing it on what you see on the news, you would think it doesn't happen.
Yeah,
anymore,
I mean, we both
really.
we're in. Sorry.
I hear you now. At least I did. Well, yes. So that is something that's something we want to make sure
you can
that
hear
people.
Me now?
Yes, I can hear you now. Your picture is oh, everything seems fine now. Here, say something. Are you there? Okay. Not. But that's something that we want to make sure people understand here about Ovis News. Subject matter like this, when they're sitting there, thinking, what, nobody covers this. I want to know more about human trafficking. I mean, is it still around? Does it still happen? Is this something I still need to be worried about with my children? Or, that's what Ovis is here for people who are sitting at home saying, I want to know more about this thing, and I never see any information about it. So, yeah, that's what we're all about here at Ovis. And then if people have those ideas, those story ideas, they can give them to us. They can, if they want to report on that as well, they can do the stories themselves. And then we have you and your staff, Karam, who will make sure that the information that they're putting out there is all absolutely true.
And that's what Ovis is about. It's about giving out stories that other organizations won't do. Like you said in the segment before, some news organizations just can't do it or won't do it, right? And so here at Ovis, we're trying to get out the information. Also, we're trying to fact check, and we're trying to get all the information out there that is fact checked out there, right? It's not like a sentence, but we're trying to fact check all the information that we're putting out there. And me, together with my team that we're trying to build right now, we're looking for interns as well. If anyone's interested, go to ovis.news and sign up to be an intern or be a fact checker. And here we're trying to, my team, we're trying to fact check every story and every article that we publish on the site. We'll both be fact checking them with misinformation. We'll try to find out if the article is filled with misinformation or not. And we'll also be doing editorial fact checking and going into deeply into editorial fact checking and trying to understand if every word, every sentence is correct. It's fact checked. Here at Ovis, we have a 3 fact checker system. So every article, every story will be fact checked by 3 fact checkers and will be approved by them all. So our hope is to assure every article and every story that was published on our site will be fact checked and vetted and will be as accurate as possible at that time.
Exactly. So yeah, everybody out there, if you want to work side by side with Karam and all, come on board. We'd love to have you here at Ovis. Not only bringing us the story ideas that you want to see, but you can also be part of the process in helping to report those stories. And as always, with everything here on Ovis, we only deal in the truth. And so that is the role that Karam plays, that all of us play, the staff here at Ovis, making sure that we are bringing you the news as it should be, not not with any spin, just the facts.
Yes, absolutely.
So are you here with us, Elsa?
You tell me. Can you guys hear me now and see me now? Is the
Yes.
delay gone? That is so weird. That's never happened. I apologize. You guys, thank you so much for joining us and hanging with us during some of the technical issues. We really appreciate you joining us for our Sunday night Zap Chats, so we can be news nerds and geek out on what Ovis is trying to accomplish and what we're trying to provide to our community here and all over the world. If you get a chance, go to ovis.news and check us out and see what we're all about. We'd love to see you. Until then, thank you guys so much for joining us. We'll be back next Sunday night, same time, 6 o'clock for Zap Chat.
Take care, everyone. Good night.